given that the checklist tool is so popular among our students, I wanted to just go over a few different approaches that you could consider taking with your checklist tool. Ultimately, in our discussions with students, I wouldn't say we have any reliable data to say one way is better than the other. Students were pretty much just saying, use the checklist tool, put the stuff that's due on the checklist tool, but there's not really best practices to be recommended. But there are several different approaches that I'll take given on the course for the way I approach checklists in any course design. So here's the most basic example. So in each of these examples, I'm going to show the same content just with different checklists. So here's the most basic example where I just have a simple list of the items that the students are supposed to do that week. I do like to start my checklists with each item with a verb. I feel like it's more action oriented and it feels more like students understand that this is something they actually have to submit. So instead of just saying discussion reflection, I like to say submit it so that they understand that there's an action they actually have to accomplish. And then sometimes I'll even go so far as to say in assignments or in tests and quizzes, which I didn't do here because this is just an example. But sometimes that might be a useful thing to help clarify to students where certain things go. Students do sometimes have confusion, especially if you're using a lot of different tools about where to post certain things. So especially if I had assignments, quizzes, and forums in my site, I would start specifying that. I would say in assignments, in tests and quizzes, in forums, so they know exactly where they're supposed to be putting these items. And then obviously I have down here below all the things they're supposed to be doing for each of those checklist items. I might even say like in your physical textbook, or if you had a digital textbook, in Pearson, in my textbooks, whatever it was. So this is the most basic example. If I go into my example 2 here, same list, I've just now put a due date here in the description of the checklist, just to give students that extra reminder that that these are the due dates for each of these items. So that's just in the description of the checklist, same exact list. Example 3 shows I'm putting due dates actually within each of the items. So if you have multiple due dates throughout your course, this might be a helpful way for students to stay on track. For my reading, I even said that this is a suggested due date. It's not necessary, but it's suggested that you read by the time of essentially our class session. This is something that you'll note that I'm not putting the actual dates of the semester. So I'm not saying this is February 2nd. I'm saying just Thursday. This way, when I duplicate my course over, if I kind of can keep to that same pattern, I can keep these as is without having to make modifications. So Thursdays and Sundays, if those are my 2 main due dates, I can just leave this as is. Obviously, you'd have to tweak if you get off track in the semester, you're not really in radiation subject at this point, you would have to make adjustments. But in general, this might be a helpful way to tell students, especially if you have multiple due dates throughout your week, how they should stay on track for that week. And then the last example is even splitting out the checklist into 2 separate checklists. So I have everything that's due on Thursday, February 2nd here, and then everything due on Sunday down in this checklist. Now you'll note that I am putting the dates of the semester so that when I duplicate, say for the fall semester, I would have to actually update these dates. And so it's up to you if you like to have specific dates. I typically tend to tell people that if you're not good about keeping dates updated throughout the course, take the specific dates off. If you are the kind of person who just likes to put dates on things and thinks it actually helps your students, then put the dates on. So it's kind of a user preference. Ultimately, students at least the students we talk to, don't seem to have much of a strong preference either way. So those are just a couple different approaches for checklists that I thought I'd share. Would love to hear how you're doing your checklist in your course if you have different examples, because I'm sure there's lots of different ways to approach it.